A man with an agenda steps out of a prison exercise yard and into the shade of an alcove. He crab walks up the walls, reaching the roof, and then on to freedom. Evil has been set free, and the state is frozen in fear.
You're dealing with someone who's desperate and who doesn't want to be caught. He's a bad guy. He needs to be in custody, and we're determined to capture him.
This is the story of Danilo Cavalcante, a cold-blooded killer who terrorized a community. Before we begin, we would like to send our sincere condolences to the loved ones of Walter Jr. dos Reis and Deborah Evangelista Brandão. Little is known about Danilo Cavalcante, other than he was born on July 3, 1989 in Brazil and was raised in alleged abuse. Danilo lived a difficult life that was marred by illegal activity, alcohol, drugs, and a dark descent into gang life. Late one night on November 5, 2017, when Danilo was in his late 20s, he shot a man 6 times outside a Brazilian restaurant in the small town of Tocantins. The victim had been a friend of Danilo's, 20-year-old Walter Jr. Moreira do Reis. Danilo allegedly killed Walter due to a vehicle repair debt that Walter owed Danilo and he hadn't paid up. After the young man was killed, Danilo stole his vehicle and his wallet and then headed towards Puerto Rico. He obtained a fake ID and from there went on to the U.S., where he entered the country illegally. Danilo was heading towards Chester County, Pennsylvania, to his sister, Eleni. Cavalcante settled in Chester County, where he met a woman by the name of Deborah Brandão, one of his neighbors. 33-year-old Deborah and Cavalcante, now 34, eventually started dating. He seemed like a perfect fit for Deborah, and he treated her and her 2 small children well. Deborah, a single mother, had left Brazil a few years before, bringing along her 2 children, Yasmin and Jan. She wanted a better life for the 3 of them and felt that could happen in the U.S. Her sister, Sarah, had already moved to the U.S., and that gave her a solid landing spot to start a new life. Deborah and her sister Sarah had always been very close, and Deborah was even lucky enough to find an apartment very near her sister's. She obtained a job with Sarah at her own house cleaning business, and if they weren't spending time together, they always spoke by phone every day. Cavalcante and Deborah had been dating for about 1.5 years, and at first, Deborah thought Cavalcante was a perfect match for her. But as time passed, Cavalcante slowly changed, and not in a good way. One day, Deborah confided in Sarah that things weren't going well. Cavalcante had become very jealous of her, and when he was drinking, he was a totally different man. He was always jealous and suspicious of her, going through her phone without permission. There were times that he would go into rages for no reason, and on one occasion he had gotten physical and bitten Deborah. He had even chased her with a knife. Cavalcante had boldly gone as far as threatening Deborah that if she ever cheated on him, he would do the worst to her. Deborah had had enough. She was in fear for herself as well as her children. She filed a protective order against Cavalcante in December of 2020, according to the probable cause affidavit. Cavalcante was angry that Deborah had broken it off with him. She fled her present home and moved into a secret location nearby. Deborah had found a nice apartment where she felt that she and her children would be safe and life could be normal again for all of them. Cavalcante did not see it that way. He was angry and resentful towards Deborah for breaking it off with him. On the fateful day of April the 18th, 2021, Cavalcante had stalked his ex-girlfriend to a local Walmart and then followed her back to her apartment, where he pulled in behind her. He got out of his vehicle and started towards Deborah. Landlord Brian Flaxman had been there that day and observed Cavalcante and Deborah talking. When I saw them, they were just having a conversation. They had been standing by Deborah's vehicle with the trunk open, according to Flaxman. Cavalcante didn't appear mad and certainly was not aggressive at that time, so the landlord left to handle errands. Deborah's 2 young children had been playing outside when Cavalcante had pulled up and started speaking to their mother. Then, Cavalcante suddenly grabbed Deborah by the hair, threw her to the ground, and began stabbing her with 2 knives. In horror, the children witnessed the grisly assault of Cavalcante stabbing their mother. Yasmin was able to run inside and scream for help for her mother. A tenant named Michael Queeder ran out of the building and tried to help Deborah by performing CPR, but it was too late. Deborah Brandão was dead, covered in blood, lying in the front lawn with 38 stab wounds to her chest.
And new at 6, a Chester County man is behind bars tonight after he's accused of killing his ex-girlfriend in front of her young children. Police say Danilo Cavalcante stabbed Deborah Brandão yesterday afternoon outside of her Schuylkill Township home. According to investigators, Brandão's 7-year-old daughter and 3-year-old son witnessed the crime, and the little girl identified the suspect for police.
The pain these children and all of Ms. Brandão's loved ones are enduring as a result of the defendant's depravity is horrific. We will ensure that the defendant is brought to justice for this cold-blooded, premeditated, and despicable act.
Police arrested Cavalcante in Virginia. He already had a restraining order put in place against him last December.
An autopsy would later reveal multiple stab wounds to the victim's throat, heart, and lungs. What could have been the reason for such a violent attack? It was believed there may have been something that set Cavalcante off. Since their breakup, Cavalcante had remained angry with Deborah and had started stalking her. Finally, she told him that she knew about his murder case in Brazil and chose to tell him to leave her children alone or she was going to turn him in. Cavalcante knew there was an active warrant back in Brazil. Cavalcante made it personal. He wanted complete control over Deborah, and he wanted to silence her. After the crime scene was processed, the landlord had been allowed into Deborah's apartment. He found that she had placed cheap brands of alarms on all of the doors and windows. She was clearly aware someone might come for her. She must have been scared, he stated. The trial of Cavalcante began on August the 16th, 2023 in Chester County, Pennsylvania for the murder of Deborah Brandão. Brandão's own children bravely gave testimony in the case. The 9-year-old had previously identified Cavalcante from a photograph she had been shown shortly after her mother was killed. "That's him. That's the guy that killed my mom. Please get him and put him in prison," the affidavit shows. Investigators learned that there had been a history of domestic violence. In the past, Cavalcante had assaulted and threatened to kill Deborah due to his extreme jealousy. Deborah filed a protective order against Cavalcante in December of 2020. It was still valid at the time of her death. Assistant District Attorney Zachary Urich made sure the jury knew that Deborah had tried to get protection from the authorities in the past because of violent incidents by Cavalcante, but he was never held accountable for those allegations. It was Urich's last statement that resonated in the courtroom, saying, "In a lot of ways, we failed her." Speaking of law enforcement and the judicial system, Cavalcante stopped Deborah's ability to speak, but he could not take away her voice. It only took the jury 15 minutes to come to a guilty verdict for Cavalcante. He was convicted of first-degree murder. Just days later, he would be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Cavalcante was moved to the Chester County Prison, one of only 4 prison structures used as the county jail. There, he would await transfer to one of Pennsylvania's state prisons and begin serving his life sentence. It would be less than 2 weeks later that he would break free from that prison. On August the 31st, 2023, Cavalcante was discovered missing during a cell block count that was done nearly an hour later. His 2-week-long reign of terror on the community hit like a storm, lashing out with a vengeance. When the community was alerted of Cavalcante's escape, a veil of fear set in and everyone became vigilant about their surroundings. No one wanted to turn a corner on their property or walk into a room of their homes or businesses and find the escapee staring back at them. The first sighting of Cavalcante was in a house in Pocopson Township, Pennsylvania. This had occurred during the night while the home was occupied by the family.
So we end up going to sleep. I hear a noise at around 11:30. I walk out of the bedroom, and from my bedroom, I can look down. So I look down towards the living room, and the kitchen's off to the side. And I thought I heard a noise. I went back to my wife, and I said, hey, I don't want to freak you out, but I think there might be somebody downstairs. Grab your phone. I went back out. I saw that the door was slightly ajar. That's when my stomach dropped. I ran down the hallway to make sure all my kids were accounted for. And when I came back, I could start to hear, a little bit of shuffling. So I grabbed any kind of weapon that I could. And ironically, the only thing that I had there was a picture frame of my wife and kids. And when I grabbed it, I did like a Frisbee motion. Should I go over the head? And in that moment, I realized how ridiculous this is. Here you have this guy who's a murderer surrounded by steak knives, because we did have steak that night. And I looked to my left and saw the light switch and decided to flick the light switch on and off 3 or 4 times. And there was a little bit of a pause. And then he flicked the light switch back at me from the kitchen. So that was kind of the acute moment of terror. I turned to my wife. I said, he's downstairs. Call 911 right now.
It's autumn, and as we crash into the holiday season, it's not unusual to get run down. I know I've always felt that way this time of year. This year, though, I got a chance to try a new product, and it's helped me get in the good, deep-quality, dream-filled sleep that I needed. Dream from Beam is simple. It's a healthy cup of cocoa taken at night to help me fall asleep and stay asleep throughout the night. And the next morning, there's no grogginess. I wake up with plenty of energy. Before bed, make yourself a mug of the hot cocoa beverage. Enjoy it, and then settle in for the rest you have been craving. Dream can be formulated to meet your needs, tastes, and dietary restrictions. They have both CBD and non-CBD versions, and both are vegan, keto-friendly, non-dairy, and gluten-free with no GMO ingredients. In a clinical study, 93% of the participants reported Dream helped them get better sleep. Just click on the link below and you can shop Beam's biggest sale and get up to 50% off. The discount will be automatically applied. No code is necessary. The next sighting of Cavalcante was during the early morning hours of September the 2nd. He was spotted on a home security camera carrying a distinctive backpack. Not long after, he was seen by a highway patrol officer, but he would disappear into the woods before the officers could converge on the area.
The photos confirm that Cavalcante has not changed his appearance, but also that he has obtained a backpack.
Police say Cavalcante slipped through a nearby perimeter, but believe he's still lurking nearby.
We realized within just a few hours where he was, and so he's not had a tremendous amount of time to move a long distance.
We're learning more about how Cavalcante may have broken out of the Chester County Prison. Officials have not said how, but the Philadelphia Inquirer reports that a source inside the prison says Cavalcante climbed onto the roof from the exercise yard, then ran across the roof and dropped down to a less secure area, fleeing the prison grounds from there. The source says this was nearly identical to how a previous prisoner escaped only months ago. State police and the district attorney's office declined to comment on that report, and the prison did not return our request for comment.
After Cavalcante escaped, an interview was done by the New York Times with the mother, Iracema Cavalcante, still residing in Brazil. She said, "He had no other choice. Danilo had to do it." Iracema blamed Deborah for her own death. It was her own fault because of the stranglehold she put on him, the stance she took with him. Iracema went on to say, "If I had said my son didn't make a mistake, I'd be lying. I know what my son did was wrong. I know my son should pay for his mistake. But I want my son to pay for his mistake with dignity, not pay with his life." Interview in the New York Times by Melissa Koenig, published on September 13, 2023.
allows us to visually see where we've got people placed. In this area, we've got tactical teams operating right now, mounted, canines, aviation.
It would be September 4th before Cavalcante was seen again, which occurred around the Longwood Gardens, a beautiful botanical garden just a few miles from the Chester County Prison. Cavalcante was spotted twice on the garden's security cameras as he acquired more items. Added to his collection was a duffel bag and a hoodie sweatshirt.
Good morning. Earlier this morning, Danilo Cavalcante was spotted on a trail camera at Longwood Gardens. We just got this information from Pennsylvania State Police just within the last few minutes. According to police, they say that Cavalcante was able to have a backpack, a sling-like duffel bag, and a hoodie. They're not sure how exactly he was able to get a hold of those supplies, but these are new details that we are just now learning from this news conference that occurred starting at 8:30 in the morning. We're also learning that the perimeter has been shifting south, now on and across Baltimore Pike. The Pennsylvania State Police say keeping him on the run is a good thing. Let's send it over so you can listen to what some of Pennsylvania State Police said.
Oh, I think he's absolutely succumbing to the pressure, and yes, he's trying to escape, and that's what he managed to do. He found a point that he could squeeze through that perimeter, and he traveled south. We'll now expand that perimeter and move it so that we can try and encapsulate him again, and we're already actively searching those areas.
On September the 5th, Cavalcante was spotted by a homeowner in a creek bed on the property. Cavalcante fled into the woods, vanishing again before the officers could capture him. On the next 2 nights, Cavalcante was spotted on a trail cam around Longwood Gardens again, but officials didn't learn about this sighting until the next evening. Concern was growing within the community, as well as fear and unease. People wanted to know how he was wandering in and out of properties and always evading the police.
Yeah, and Rick, we now have a better idea of why there was that burst of activity earlier this evening around Longwood Gardens. Law enforcement sources are telling us that they did discover an image of Cavalcante on one of those trail cameras on Longwood Gardens property. However, the image was captured on the camera last night on Wednesday night, but the discovery was not made until this evening. Still, it made for a tense hour as law enforcement moved in, but tonight, Cavalcante is still on the run.
Back to today, once the search moved east toward Creek Road and Longwood announced it was able to open to the public again, I'm told a small number of people showed up, including a man I met at Wawa late tonight near Longwood Gardens. He said he was quickly escorted off the property by police after the report of that noon sighting.
On September 9th, Cavalcante slipped onto the property of Bailey's Dairy Farm, 3.1 miles from Longwood Gardens. He found an unlocked delivery van with the keys still in it and took it. He then drove about 20 miles to Phoenixville to a former co-worker's home looking for help. The homeowner hadn't been home, but Cavalcante was captured on the doorbell ring cam. He now appeared clean-shaven and wearing a yellow or green hoodie, a black baseball hat, green prison pants, and white shoes. He was starting to change his identity now. The next of September the 10th, law enforcement located a stolen van in a field. It had been abandoned by Cavalcante and the gas tank was empty. He was on foot again, and the perimeter had to be shifted to the northern part of Chester County. The apprehension and fear of the community was growing as they wondered when or where the killer might be captured.
Secondly, we're also asking the community to avoid the wooded area or anything outside of the immediate area around their homes in that perimeter that I described. As I said, we're actively searching that area. We're certainly not trying to lock anyone down, but we want to keep residents as safe as possible while we thoroughly search that area. So again, we ask them to refrain from that area. And I'd also like to thank the community for their support. You know, this has gone on for a couple of days now. I know it's stressful for the community, but I want to assure you that all of us up here and our respective offices are working diligently to bring this to a conclusion as quickly as possible. Please know we are devoting all available resources. We're constantly identifying additional needs. We're making sure we bring those in and we will resolve this as quickly as possible and as safely as possible.
September 11th gave way to a spotting of Cavalcante in Chester County's South Coventry Township, and a perimeter was formed around the area. Footprints of the jail shoes that Cavalcante had been wearing were found, but Cavalcante seemed to be one step ahead. Authorities received a call from a residence that some work boots had been stolen off of her porch. Then, the police received some very disconcerting news. A call from a resident of Coventry Road advised that a Hispanic male wearing a T-shirt had entered the caller's garage and stolen a .22 caliber rifle. The resident drew his pistol and fired at the man as he ran away, but missed him. Cavalcante was now armed and considered extremely dangerous to anyone who may come in contact with him.
Police say the fugitive stole a rifle from a garage last night, and then he came face to face with the homeowner who shot at him but missed. CBS's Nikki Dementri reports on the expanding search.
Danilo Cavalcante, who police say is now armed with a .22 caliber rifle with a scope and a flashlight, was spotted twice on Monday night.
We considered him desperate. We considered him dangerous.
Around 8 p.m., investigators say a driver spotted a man crouching near the road in eastern Pennsylvania. Shortly after, police found Cavalcante's prison shoes. Then, around 10:10 p.m., Cavalcante stole a firearm from a garage. The homeowner fired a pistol at him as he fled. He has been spotted 14 times since he escaped from prison last month, but continues to evade law enforcement. Art Roderick is a former U.S. Marshal.
You've got multiple agencies out there. They're all trying to get their communications together with so many different law enforcement agencies coming in. We don't need anybody out there trying to do any vigilante stuff.
On September the 13th, just after midnight, a house near Prizer Road had its burglar alarm go off. Officers responded but found nothing, but resources were moved into that area just in case it had been Cavalcante who had set it off. Near 1 a.m., a DEA aircraft equipped with thermal imaging flew over the area and was able to pick up a heat signal north of Pfizer Road. But when a lightning storm moved in, the aircraft had to leave the area due to the bad weather.
And here's something I wanted to share with you. The thermal imaging, this is when they were looking for the escaped prisoner, what they were using. And they use this because they can be a little bit wider out in distance from a plane or an aircraft. And this is what they see when they look. Things like houses, these can be rather cool, so they register as cool. Plants, rather cool. If you had a car, it could be on the warm side, but humans and animals will register as a brighter color of a white or an orangish color.
Near 8 a.m., tactical teams with a combination of Border Patrol, state police officers, and others converged on the area of the heat source that the thermal imaging had picked up hours earlier. They moved in quietly and with an element of surprise, but Cavalcante was trying to escape by crawling through thick underbrush, still carrying the rifle he had stolen. He didn't get very far. The Border Patrol dog named Yoda was deployed, and Cavalcante was quickly subdued.
Yoda, the canine who subdued escaped prisoner Danilo Cavalcante, is America's new hero. Yoda is trained to bite and hold, just like this. Newly released images show Yoda pinning Cavalcante by the legs after biting his scalp. Yoda is a Belgian Malinois and joins the ranks of other legendary canine heroes.
The Radio Room, Chester County government, and the various other agencies working on the prisoner escape are proud to announce the subject is in custody. Repeating, subject is in custody. Authority of the Radio Room, time 08:18 hours.
The manhunt had ended. Danilo Cavalcante had been captured. Cavalcante was taken to a state police station. He would be processed and also questioned there. After that, he would be transferred to a state correctional facility to begin serving his life sentence. As far as the community, they could now breathe a well-deserved sigh of relief. 2 weeks had been more than enough of worry, stress, and fear since Cavalcante had wreaked havoc through the area.
Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel Bivens. Today is a great day here in Chester County. Our nightmare is finally over and the good guys won. We owe a debt of gratitude to all of the first responders for their tireless and dedicated efforts in bringing this fugitive to justice. They worked around the clock, and we are deeply grateful to all of them. Our community can finally regain its normalcy and breathe a collective sigh of relief.
So an interview was conducted with Cavalcante, Deputy U.S. Marshals, Pennsylvania State Police, and county detectives interviewed him. I personally was not present for the interview, but I can tell you what was said, which was relayed to me from our deputy marshals. So essentially, everything we thought about Cavalcante and his flight was true. He was a desperate man. He was actively avoiding apprehension. And shortly after he escaped from the prison, he had hunkered down in an area that was very, very secluded, very, very wooded. And he didn't move for the first couple of days, he said. He survived on a watermelon that he found at a farm. He drank stream water. He was hiding his fecal matter under leaves and foliage so that law enforcement couldn't track him. He was a desperate man. An interesting statement he said also was that his end game was to carjack somebody and to head north up to Canada. And he intended to do that in the next 24 hours. He said the law enforcement presence where he was immense, and that he felt that he needed to leave. He had seen the aerial assets we were using. He had seen the helicopters. So that's why he held onto that rifle for so long.
Pennsylvania police had been getting some serious practice in escapee manhunts. Before Cavalcante escaped, there had been a previous inmate who had broken free, not once, but twice, from the Chester County Prison. His name was Igor Bolt. His first escape was in July of 2019 when he walked away from a work release program, and his second escape was in May of 2023 where he climbed the wall of an exercise yard onto the roof. Both times he was captured. On July the 6th, 2023, in nearby Warren County, an accused murderer and kidnapper, Michael Burham, had escaped from the Warren County Jail by climbing on top of exercise equipment and exiting the exercise yard through a metal-grated roof. Burham led law enforcement on a 9-day manhunt and was eventually caught and rearrested. Escapes can be attributed to several things: inadequate security equipment, not enough staffing, or staffing not remaining alert at all times around the incarcerated. It can just take seconds for a mishap to happen. To err on the side of incompetence can have a high price, whether it's monetary or at the cost of someone's life. Although escapes from adult jails in Pennsylvania are down significantly from pre-pandemic years, the number of escapees dropped from 106 in 2019 to 27 in 2020. It increased to 43 last year. This graph shows the number of escapees from Pennsylvania jails between 2015 and 2022. Cavalcante was now in the custody of the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections. He is at SCI Phoenix in Collegeville, Montgomery County. It is a maximum security prison, and Cavalcante is now known by nothing but a number. He is serving a mandatory life sentence for first-degree murder. He will also be facing a charge of felony escape. Eleni Cavalcante is facing deportation due to an expired visa, and she refused to cooperate during the escape of her brother. Although state police would not confirm that Eleni Cavalcante had helped her brother after the escape from the Chester County Prison. Concerning the murder that happened in Brazil, well, he has an outstanding warrant since 2018 there. There are those who want to see justice for that murder served as well.
Still, there are others who care deeply about this case. That includes Eva Pereira Lima. She is the grandmother of a 20-year-old man Cavalcante is accused of killing here in Brazil back in 2017. She says even knowing this convicted killer will spend the rest of his life in prison brings her no joy. No, she says, I do not feel like there has been any justice in any of this. Only when that bad thing doesn't exist anymore, then I will feel peace. Then you have the regional prosecutor who is preparing to try Cavalcante in absentia for the murder of Walter Moreira dos Reis. Rafael Alami says what haunts him about this case is that a paperwork issue resulted in Cavalcante being able to flee Brazil even though there was a warrant out for his arrest.
E não colocou no Banco Nacional.
The prosecutor says they did not put the warrant in the national system of Brazil, so only the local police were aware. The federal police were not alerted, and that opened the door for Cavalcante to escape. That's the part that hurts me.
Escape prisoner Danilo Cavalcante was on the run in Chester County for 2 weeks before he was found.
A canine named Yoda was key to capturing Cavalcante, who killed his ex-girlfriend. Well, tonight, her son received a special surprise from Yoda's handler.
As Siafa Lewis tells us, it was delivered by a local officer who's become close with the family.
CBS News Philadelphia was on hand Friday night as Chester County Detective David Nieves paid a visit to this home in Phoenixville. That precious little boy is 6-year-old Ian Brandão. There is his 9-year-old sister Yasmin and their aunt Sarah. Their mother and Sarah's sister was Deborah Brandão, Danilo Cavalcante's ex-girlfriend. But tonight's get-together is about looking forward and the future. Detective Nieves had an idea and now has a special surprise for Ian. You see, Ian loves Baby Yoda from the Star Wars franchise. He also loves dogs. So think about the fact that the 4-year-old Belgian Malinois who played a key role in Cavalcante's capture is a canine who bears the name Yoda. Canine Yoda's handler, a U.S. Border Patrol agent, sent 2 signed photos, one with Yoda's paw print and a letter to Ian. The joy and love felt in that room were palpable.
Do you have a pet for me, the Baby Yoda thingy? The dog gets to play with Baby Yoda? That sounds funny. Happy. Why? He's happy.
Now you're probably wondering who Detective Nieves is. He worked the Cavalcante case from its inception in 2021. He has checked in with and has been close to the family ever since.
If you or someone you know is involved in a domestic violence situation, please take a moment. Make contact to the hotline information being provided. It only takes a moment to make the decision to find help and support. Please reach out. The Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-799-7233. They provide for people in distress or those around them 24-hour support. Get help today. If you found this case compelling, don't forget to like the video, comment down below your take on it, and please subscribe to the channel. Also hit the notification bell in order to stay up to date each time we reveal a new shocking case. Until next time, stay safe and keep your eyes peeled. You never know what's lurking in the shadows.